here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith. It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1823. That was the day abolitionist and women's suffragist Mary Ann Shadd Cary was born. Her parents were free blacks of color in the slave state of Delaware. They were involved with many prominent abolitionists and active in the Underground Railroad. The family moved to Pennsylvania, where Mary and her siblings were educated in Quaker schools. As a young woman, Mary became a teacher and returned to Wilmington, Delaware, where she opened a school for black children. Once the Fugitive Slave Law was passed in 1850, Mary and many other free blacks fled to Canada to safely continue their abolitionist work. She opened a school for fugitive slaves in Windsor, Ontario, just across the river from Detroit. Mary soon came under fire in the local press for insisting the school be racially integrated. She responded by starting her own newspaper, the Provincial Freeman. She and her husband Thomas often traveled to the United States to continue their anti-slavery work. They were present at John Brown's 1858 Constitutional Convention. Mary worked with Osborne Perry Anderson to publish his 1861 memoir, A Voice from Harper's Ferry. Anderson had participated in Brown's raid and was the lone African-American survivor. After her husband's death, Mary returned to the United States with her children to help recruit black soldiers for the Union Army. Once the Civil War was over, Mary moved to Washington, D.C. to teach. She enrolled in Howard University, where she earned a law degree. There, she joined the National Women's Suffrage Association and worked with Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony. She continued to advocate for civil rights and women's equality until her death in 1893. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I came across a story of the Ohio School Board. Evidently, the president of the Ohio School Board resigned. Evidently, this woman, Laura Kohler, I guess is her name, she's the Republican head of the Ohio State Board of Education. In her fifth term, decides that, okay, I got to resign, because ultimately she was going to be thrown out anyway, just aside, because she had the audacity to help write and then to not vote for this Resolution 20, which, as I found out, Resolution 20 is an anti-racism equality resolution that they thought that a Republican head of the Ohio School Board, or Ohio Board of Education, thought was okay. And they moved on, and, well, she refused to vote against. So now she was going to be ousted. She resigned, obviously, before she was ousted. I guess the GOP will truly eat their own. And this is, to me, this is another one of those moments of a party that is so far divided from we the people, so far divided from just basic sanity. And I would argue a big part of that is the fact that our elections almost in a lot of places don't matter, because it's so badly gerrymandered. So the game seems rigged even before you cast the first ballot. And here to share some thoughts on that, I've asked Susan Tebben to come talk with us. Susan's a reporter over at the Ohio Capital Journal. Susan, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me again.
So, I'm looking at this story of the former head of the Ohio State Board of Education. Has there been much fallout over this on the other side? I know there was a bunch of crazy, oh my God, they're going to teach critical race theory. Oh my God, they're going to brainwash my children. Oh my God. I know there was that. Anything on the other side?
Well, this actually is a pretty shortly developing story. Literally yesterday was when I heard about her going to resign. And there's actually a second person on the board that has also resigned. I talked to him. He didn't want to talk about it, and he kind of took the tack of, I've been on for 5 years. Time for me to move on, and I can do my work now. But it's there's been some outcry saying that this is the legislature trying to take over, because the way that our state school board is, some of them are appointed, some of them are elected. And if they're appointed by the governor. And the confirmation process, I guess, is a little murky, because they can confirm these board members in any time during the General Assembly, which is a biannual thing, every 2 years. So, but they haven't really messed with that much. If they don't get confirmed, the governor appointed them, we'll just move on. 2 days ago, the 27th, 3 people got confirmed by a Senate committee, Senate Primary and Education Committee, which everybody was like, that's weird. That's not usually, we don't usually worry about this. In fact, one of the Democratic members of the committee said, we have a bunch of people that are still yet to be confirmed. Why are we confirming these 3 people? And the head of the committee said, that's just the names I have. So it's very interesting how this is going, and sort of some red flags are coming up for a lot of people on this. I actually just talked to a teachers union head who said she's on the fence about the state board being, whether it should be appointed or elected. And she said, because of gerrymandering, because I don't know who I'm going to get, because the state is gerrymandered in such a way that we could get more people who believe critical race theory is being taught in schools when it's not.
Yeah, because this is the first thing that I came across. I'm going, well, she's out. She was going to be ousted, and they were going to bring in a whole slew of crazy people, because there's a lot of organizing money is going into taking over our school boards, because now I guess there's some billionaire money out there going, hey, we can indoctrinate the next generation of kids the way we want to, instead of how we claim it's being done. And this is, to me, part of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely an argument for that we're having outside groups that are coming to these board meetings, just, local school meetings, not even the state board. Obviously, the state board's getting a lot of, pushback from this, but local school boards are also seeing there's calls out for, even if you don't have a student in this district, come and have your piece and say critical race theory is happening in these schools, whether or not they know that's actually truth.
Yeah, it's crazy. And did you see the guy the state representative down in Texas? Who was listed 850 books that he finds objectionable, and he wants schools to report, do you actually have these in your libraries? Are they in your classroom? And he's actually taking more requests. I'm expecting book burnings any day now.
Yeah, it kind of rings of that, doesn't it? And it's interesting. They when I talk to people on the anti-CRT side, they say they have examples all over the state of this, but I guess no one's reporting these to the actual state agencies, because I call them and they say we've had a handful of reports of this, and it's not clear where those investigations go. So
I'm in a weird spot. I'm on neither side. I'm on the side of, I want my kids to actually learn history.
Right.
I mean, that is that too much to ask for?
Right, and it's hard, because you also have, and I don't know, some of them obviously will connect, but the people that want school choice and the people that think critical race theory is happening in schools, which we should point out for your readers and listeners, critical race theory is actually an advanced legal theory. It's not actually something to teach in schools. What they're really talking about is teaching race as it impacts society, and that makes some people feel uncomfortable, so they think that shouldn't be the way it is. So yeah, you're having people that say school choice, private schools should be your choice, and public schools are not serving the purpose that they need to, but then they're taking the resources away from public schools that they need to build and be better than they have been before.
But we're saving it by killing it, Susan.
Right. And it's, they fail to see the statistics that say that public schools are actually doing fine. Like, they're bringing out students that know what they're talking about and can make it through the world.
Yeah, no, look, public schools educate, what was it, like 95% of the kids in this country, some outrageous number like that. Right. I think we're doing okay. I would like to do better. We could use better resources. We could have smaller class sizes. We could have a lot of things. And this just seems like an idiotic fight, but it seems like one of those fights that comes when you know that you have control of a system that you can then manipulate for your benefit. And this, again, comes back to how rigged most of our elections are. I mean, we've seen the gerrymandered maps. I live in a district the 30th senatorial district here in Pennsylvania. Looks like the kid who's usually bent over, peeing on something, only with a bad case of gas. So I live in the fart cloud of the 30th senatorial district here, because they decided that they were going to just draw this little outcropping out of the butt of that kid, and this is how it is. And we've seen really just bizarre. I mean, in Ohio, you got some of the craziest maps.
Yep. And seeing how complicated it really is. But one of the things that I've noticed is people are really, certainly in reading the depositions that are in the lawsuits from the legislative, because we congressional, but we're still suing for the legislative, we being the anti-gerrymandering folks, not me. I don't have the money for that. But we're seeing how hard this process is to not split up counties and split up municipalities and things. But we're also seeing on the other side the GOP, who sees the splits they want to make and sees the splits they don't want to make. And it's sort of, we're at an impasse here where the Democrats want to see one thing and the Republicans want to see another. And we're not. Some of the anti-gerrymandering people are saying, we just want you to focus on what the voters want. We don't want this infighting, all this crap that you're doing behind closed doors. We want to see you looking at the statewide averages, looking at the voters, and seeing this is where it should be.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm not opposed to gerrymandering. I'm not, honestly, and hear me out. I'm not opposed to gerrymandering. If your goal is to get voter registrations in those districts as close to 50-50 as possible, so that we are then arguing about ideas and we are then trying to persuade voters one way or the other, that there is some kind of competition. But when you're in an area where, hey, let's figure out how to draw a giant fart cloud so that we can get another 5% of Republican votes over here and 5% of Democratic votes over there, so that we keep these seats uncompetitive, I got a problem with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's the whole thing. Is it's anti-gerrymandering people are saying we want this to be competitive. So I don't think you have to have gerrymandering either way. And I think there is an element of gerrymandering they want on both sides, because they want to force the issue of having their way. So I don't think you need gerrymandering to do that. I think you need, how the voters are voting. It's 45% Democratic in this state, but that's not what the state house looks like. So I think if you just naturally make it not gerrymandered, you'll have that competitiveness come out. But that's, just my opinion, having done this for about 2 years.
Yeah. Now the argument is, and I live in a very red section of this state. The comment is you got Philly on one end, Pittsburgh on the other, and basically Alabama in the middle. I mean, that's that's what I've heard. In fact, James Carville will give him credit where that is. But this is a heavily Republican area in the center of the state. This is a very rural area, they still feel the need to gerrymander this area where it's overwhelmingly a Republican area, just so they can get the advantage in one more district somewhere else. It's really quite amusing to watch them jump through these hurdles to protect their incumbents and the people who have the pen.
Right. It is very interesting. The most recent map that I saw went from the top of Michigan, or where Ohio meets Michigan, almost all the way down the left side of the state along the Indiana border. So it's interesting seeing them all try to sort of dance around and figure out how this would look best and how people will actually. But they've all been avoiding the actual idea of it, which is that 70% of voters said that they wanted this process to change, and as of yet, they've missed every deadline that they've needed to get through, and they haven't really. I mean, everyone you talk to says that this process could be done differently, including members of the redistricting commission who are Republicans. The Secretary of State said that it's to be determined if this process could be done better, but he's already supremely disappointed, is what he said, in how this has gone so far.
Yeah. Any chance of just picking like a third grade class randomly from some grade school and go, here, your job is your school project for this semester is to redraw Ohio maps for this decade. Congratulations, you win. And oh, by the way, at the end, a pizza party.
That would be my vote, honestly. I think we should go back to the pizza contests. We've had contests, and a couple of years ago, 10 years ago, when we did this before, we had some kids contests, and they came out with, and people have said that those maps were perfectly fine. Unfortunately, you get into using software and stuff, and apparently that jiggers things up.
Yeah, no, I mean, here in Pennsylvania, there was a woman in Allentown who basically drew our maps that, where she drew them was for competition. To where you had the kind of balance that I would look for, because I think the problem with our political system and the reason that I think you've seen such a polarization is we're not competing on ideas anymore, because you've got people on the right and on the left who don't fear anyone but their extreme to their right or left. And there's no ability to actually fight on those ideas where I think the mass of us are at. We just want to get stuff done. The fact that we still don't have this Build Back Better plan and the bipartisan infrastructure bill done yet is just mind-blowing to me, when everybody I talk to goes, yeah, I'd like my roads paved, please. Yeah, I want to get to the other side of that bridge. Thank you very much.
With my tires still attached. Yeah.
With my tires still intact, yes.
Yeah, it seems like it would be the simplest thing. I'm sure it's complicated to figure this out, but I feel like there's been a loss of what are we actually doing this for? And you're right. There's not only an apathy from the voters when they see this happening and they see no change in they come for hours and testify and say this is wrong and nothing changes. But you also see apathy from the politicians on both sides. If they're in a safe district, why should we worry about it? I'll just sit here and let this thing burn because it's working for me.
Which is why it's insane that they're even anywhere near being in charge of this. And I say the same thing about here. That old line that everyone throws out, and it's a cliche at this point, but the voters should pick the politicians, not the other way around. Yeah, duh.
It seems pretty simple, yeah.
And
just to try to drive home how much gerrymandering impacts with prisons, with schools, with everything. And you're talking about school boards, and I'm sure there's people out there that would never have connected gerrymandering to school boards, but it affects everything that has to do with government, with policy, with everything.
Oh, I know. I've got people who would argue on the gerrymandering front that every school district's gerrymandered because we got to protect our little, our zip code and our from those people, because we want to keep those people, and we can define those people as whatever subcategory is not currying favor at the moment, but we got to protect ourselves from those people.
Yeah, exactly. And we have two municipalities. I can't remember if they're townships. They're two pieces of this region that have declared themselves abortion sanctuary cities, where you can't have abortions there, and that's something that I think is connected to gerrymandering, because if they didn't have the base to do that, it wouldn't work. Yeah. Because these are city councils, these are commissions that are doing these things.
And what I would probably guarantee
doesn't seem to work.
And what I would probably guarantee is there was never any abortion clinic or facility in that area that was doing them anyway. It's nothing but a political statement on their part.
And they've taken up a mission, I think, is what it is. And we're seeing that. I mean, it's not even just these small little commissions. The state legislature is doing the same thing. I've had covered 2 abortion bills this week that passed through. So
crazy. And now you guys have got elections coming up on Tuesday, right? There's 2 congressional elections that I don't think are going to, I think because of how badly things are gerrymandered, that aren't going to bother going either way. You got the 11th, which is Marcia Fudge's old district up near Cleveland, right? I think, yeah. That probably going to go the way Chantel Brown, I think her name is. Mm-hmm. And then the 15th congressional district, where the Steve Stevers resigned to become president and CEO of the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. I'm sure it pays better, and I hear it's got a really good dental plan.
Yeah, Steve Stivers. That was an interesting one for him to give up, because that's quite a. It's I think pretty safe Republican, but he had a lot of wherewithal there, and I'm surprised he gave it up, honestly. But yeah, as if we don't have enough going on, we've got an election to take care of as well.
Yeah, I would argue the Chamber of Commerce gig pays a lot better. Yeah. I mean, we like to say that Congress people make a lot of money. I think $174,000 a year plus health care and maybe a little pension money. But I think that gig's got to be pushing, high 6 figures, maybe low 7. We'll go high 6.
Yeah, and definitely has some, push and pull to it that he couldn't necessarily get to with being a legislator the way he was.
Now, in looking at this, I mean, these are districts that, Fudge's district was pretty gerrymandered up, and I would argue maybe even a little bit Stivers, right?
Yeah, no, the Marcia Fudge, it came up yesterday. There was a redistricting commission meeting, and that was brought up, saying that Chantel Brown had it was too safe because Chantel Brown basically didn't have to work for it.
That's beautiful. She's going to win, so it's bad. But right. Susan, I appreciate the time. Great stuff you guys do over there at the Ohio Capitol Journal. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Good stuff, Susan Tebben. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1975. That was the day that the National Organization for Women, or NOW, called for a strike by women across the nation. They called the day Alice Doesn't Day. This referred to a critically acclaimed movie by the director Martin Scorsese that came out the year before, entitled Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. The main character in the film is Alice Height, who pursues her dream of being a singer after she is widowed. The film was lauded by feminists as a story of women's empowerment. NOW used the film title and asked women to participate with the slogan, Alice doesn't, you fill in the blank. Women were encouraged to participate in the day however they could, including refraining from volunteering, shopping, and if possible, working for one day to demonstrate their importance to the economy. Women who could not skip work were asked to wear armbands to show their solidarity with the cause. In an interview published in the Chicago Tribune, NOW President Karen DeCrow explained, quote, "There is a myth that women in the workforce could go home, but if they did, our economy would stop. If all the secretaries did not come to work, all things would stop." But not all women were excited about the day. Some anti-feminist women decided to protest the day by wearing pink, baking cookies, and performing other stereotypical female tasks. While NOW called the event a success, Time magazine deemed it a spectacular failure. One critique was that the event reflected the white middle-class dominance of the women's movement. Working-class women, and especially women of color, had a much more difficult time with holding their labor. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, some fun in Iowa. Evidently, the Iowa legislature has passed a bill that's going to allow people who have been fired because they refuse to get vaccinated, are going to let them collect unemployment. Iowa House Speaker Pat Grassley. Gee, that name sounds familiar. Evidently, Pat Grassley said, "I believe we have found a meaningful solution to protect Iowans and Iowa businesses from the Biden administration's extreme government overreach." Yeah, protecting actual workers in workplaces. Now, Iowa, interesting place. Interesting place, Iowa, especially when you look back at what the Congressional Subcommittee on the coronavirus has come up with. The fact that those meat packers that overwhelmingly seem to work in the state of Iowa, more than 59,000 of them were infected during the pandemic, and you had 269 of them die because of it. In fact, interestingly enough, Iowa, the place where one of the processing plants had supervisors who were intentionally trying to get people sick and had their little pool to see how many people they could get sick. Gee, I wonder why working people would want others to be vaccinated in the workplace. I can't possibly imagine. Considering that these are the places that will not put any sane safeguards in place. But, hey, can't protect yourself. Now, look, I'm not against the idea. I'm clearly not against the idea of employers who go, look, you got to get vaccinated. And if you don't, I got to let you go. I'm not at all opposed to that. And then, good, collect your unemployment. Go ahead. You can then see how little unemployment covers. And maybe those are the people, because I would argue overwhelmingly there are Republican voters who have, in the years past, done that whole parasite versus producer thing. I think they would then see, oh my gosh, this is pathetic, the amount that you get for unemployment. It only replaces 35, 40% of my wages. I can't live on that. And maybe a kernel of thought will go between their ears and go, maybe we should make this better. Kind of like we heard in 2009 when people who had never had to collect welfare finally realized how hard it is to jump through the hoops and figure out the process, going, maybe this isn't as easy as I thought it was. Like I said, not against it. I am not against them collecting unemployment. Now understand, you got a place like Texas. Texas, evidently, kind of like Pennsylvania, but Texas completely blew their state's unemployment system by under collecting it, and on purpose, I would argue, under collecting enough money to meet the demand, and the feds had to bail them out. Again, the state that said, we hate the federal government, we want to secede, they're the ones who are going, please, hats, hand, welfare, please, give me. It's crazy, but hey, not going to miss taking a free handout. And this is the weird thing about these conservative states, or the conservative leaders of these states, the voters, the people who live in these places are like, we just want our lives to get better. We want things to get done. When we need unemployment, it should be solvent. When we need help, it should be there. When we need the safety net, it should be there as a helping hand. And yet you've got an entire political party, the Republicans, and I will point them out, who throughout this entire process of getting us the things we need have said no. In a functional democracy, Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin would not matter. In a functional democracy, you would have a couple of Republican votes go, you know what? No, we need these things. My constituents need these things. I'll bet you we could go through a couple of states. Oh, I don't know, Joni Ernst in Iowa, where people need what's in this Build Back Better plan, where people need what could help. I don't know, maybe some of that education money. I don't know, maybe something to help Granny. I don't know, maybe some of the environmental stuff. That could help, I don't know, the farming industry, the agricultural industry, because guess what? Climate change is coming, and you know who's going to get hit hardest by it? Agricultural producers, because weathers are going to get much more extreme. You're going to have longer droughts, you're going to have floods, you're going to have all the things that make farmers' lives miserable. And guess where our farmers are? Well, that's right, Iowa. Maybe they can collect unemployment if they just denied themselves getting a vaccine. It's insane where we are. And yet, an entire Republican Party dead set against any movement. There should be 10 Republicans to vote for this Build Back Better plan. Without question. And then the Sinemas and the Manchins would not matter. For me, I had always hoped that we would live in a time where, our political fights would happen in the elections. We'd duke it out, and then it would be about the issues. But this isn't about this. This is about party loyalty. You've got all these Republicans who are, and look, the Democrats, when they're out of power, do it too. I'm not blind to that reality. But in this moment where there's a chance to go, look, we need this stuff. And globally, competitively, we're falling behind. But it's easier to go, no, we want to fight over gay marriage. No, we want to fight over bathrooms. Because that's so much better for moving the ball forward. I want good jobs for people. I want opportunities for people. I want a future for my kids. It's not hard. It's not hard. This shouldn't be rocket science. Some good news if you're a working person. September, the last 3 months ending in September, saw the largest gain in wages in the last 20 years. Now you can go, hey, it's great. Wages are going up 1.5% in the third quarter. Woohoo! That's fabulous. It is. It's good. We need it desperately. I look at it a little differently. I look at it as, well, yeah, it's about damn time. Wages have been stagnant for 40 years. How about we get a couple of more of those? And look, we can't make up all the ground over the last 45 years. We can't undo all of the horrible policies that allowed, the massive redistribution of wealth in this country to go from, as I said earlier, the reverse Robin Hood, stealing from the workers to give to the rich. We can't undo that overnight. But we can move in that direction. And the fact that one of the things gutted out of the Build Back Better plan was that billionaires tax. Now, look, I don't think it's a perfect tax, but it's the best that we were maybe going to be able to possibly get. I'm personally one of those guys who believes in a much more progressive income tax and changing what we call income. I'm sorry, capital gains, the gambling on Wall Street, that should be taxed just as much as anybody who showed up and punched a clock and swung a hammer or drove a truck or did anything else. I'm sorry, how you gain your income by watching a screen scroll by, especially when we kind of subsidize risk in these days, because you can write off your losses. I'm kind of like, I'm not going with the reason we tax, in investment gains, capital gains at a lower rate is because there's a risk involved. The people at the very top, they never sell. They hold on to that stuff. They collect the dividends and they reinvest those dividends. How they live is they run everything through shell corporations. We need to be taxing them in corporate America at a higher rate. And I would argue the blueprint for this was the tax code of the good socialist president Dwight David Eisenhower's era. Now, you could argue, well, Rick, 92% is a little bit too much. And I don't know, maybe. But the fact that we've got all of these billionaires, 745 of them last count, USDA certified, 745, who saw their wealth go up by $2.1 trillion during the pandemic while you have people literally going broke, there's a problem here. Yes, Houston, we have a problem. And the problem is our tax code. The problem is our policies. And this has been, 45 years of Reaganomics, conservative ideology, strangle the beast, drown the beast, drag it in the bathtub, drown it in the tub. It's those policies. Now, what I'm saying is, I'm not saying that, I want people to work less or, no, I'm very much a working class person. I believe you want to eat, you got to work. This could have been an opportunity. This Build Back Better plan, in my view, if I'm Manchin, I'm sitting down and go, hey, how about we create an environment where we get people jobs? Oh yeah, there is something in here. The Civilian Conservation Corps. They want to have a climate conservation corps where they're bringing in 300,000 young people to do jobs to help mitigate the risk. Oh, Iowa. Hey, Iowa. Here's an idea. Maybe some of those people could come there and help mitigate some of the flooding risk that you're going to face and some of the drought problems you're going to face as climate change gets worse. Maybe if we think a little bit down the road, if we have some visionary leadership, some planning, I wouldn't even say visionary at this point, just common sense planning. Maybe if we did just that at the minimum, things won't be so bad in the future. Kind of a thought. Because understand, if we do nothing, we continue to do nothing. If we get nothing out of this, which anyone who's listened to this show long enough knows, I'm on the I doubt we get anything. I'm as I said, a little more optimistic here now that this is where it's at. We will get something. We'll build back a little better. But from the beginning, I'm like, I'm sure they're going to shoot themselves in the foot because this is what happens when you try and do big transformative things. But if we don't get this done, problems. But what we could have done with this is we could have really, with the right kind of investment, transformed our economy and work. Because for me, I want, if the private sector can't or more likely won't create enough jobs, I want the public sector to say, we're going to step in that and fill that void and have those jobs be good family sustaining work jobs. Not busy work like my great grandparents. You know, a couple years ago, we took a trip back to Cleveland where I grew up, and still in parts of Berea, Ohio, which is a little suburb south of Cleveland. You know, I took the kids to the place, and I'm going, you know, on this piece of road, because they only have a small part of it left, on this small portion of road through the center of town there's a brick road. And my great grandfather was on his hands and knees flipping over bricks, putting them down one end of the street, and then when they got to the end, they came back and they flipped them over going the other way to give those people work to do and work that they could be proud of. And here's the thing, my great grandfather's been dead, gotta be 45 years, and that road is still there. And as a kid, I remember, you know, I was just a small kid. I remember him telling me about that. Because ultimately, while we can look at it now and go, that was just busy work, they were just giving people stuff to do, he was proud of the fact that that road was still functional. In fact, when I was in high school, the last time I lived there, you know, it was 20 some odd years ago, that road was still a brick road that you could drive on. He left something behind. You know, there's a generation that built something. Are we that generation? Are we gonna force our children to have to do that? This could have been that. It still can be. I mean, we can still do a bunch of stuff. And I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that, you know, in 45 years, my grandchildren look back and you go, hey, that generation, hey, they left us something. And oh, by the way, you know, my great grandfather did this. Don't you want that kind of a legacy? That in a generation or two down the road, that when we're all gone, they look back and go, hey, you know, they left us something. The greatest generation did that. My grandparents' generation and their parents did that. They fought through the Depression and they left something long term. And it's not because individually they were socially minded. No, it's because they had smart leadership. They had policies that said, hey, this is the direction hey, come on over here. We're going to all go in this direction. And we did it with sound policy, smart investment. And you know how we got the money to do it? We taxed billionaires. In fact, we taxed most of them out of existence. John D. Rockefeller was, you know, a gazillionaire. He was only a really, really rich guy after he died because they took 70% of what he had in an estate tax. And oddly enough, still have rich Rockefellers today. Weird how that works. But we understood back then that extreme wealth, bad for democracy. Extreme wealth, bad for the country. Extreme wealth, bad for workers. This idea, and I hear this all the time, well, I've never gotten a job from a poor person. It's true, I haven't. I've gotten them from giant corporations that are owned supposedly by the people. That's how this system's supposed to work. Not by a handful. We don't have oligarchs. We don't have, we're not supposed to have robber barons. But it's, you know, that whole we the people thing. Can you look at our system and go, that's how it works today? When you look at the fact that overwhelmingly our billionaire class doing really well, thank you very much. Elon Musk on Monday saw his wealth go up $37 billion and his tax liability has not changed. And he's whining and complaining, trying to pit us against each other because, hey, you know, they're going after him. We should defend him because eventually they're going to come after us. I'll be honest with you. I'm going to say it right out. I have never seen a $37 billion payday. I would like to. And then you know what? If I ever did see that day, I would happily pay higher taxes. Because ultimately, this is who we're talking about. We're talking about taxing the people who have the money. Because our system has been so badly rigged to ensure that they do well and everyone else does not. You know, there's I get a kick out of some of the jingoism you see. You know, people wearing, I work hard so lazy people don't have to kind of stuff. And I always have to ask, which lazy people are you talking about? The people who were born into poverty? The people who, didn't get the education that they should have been able to get because the system is pretty much rigged against them? Or are we talking about the people at the very top who have had every advantage, every privilege, every opportunity, and get every break? Who are we talking about? Crazy times. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1929. That bleak day is now known as Black Tuesday, the day of the stock market crash that marked the start of the Great Depression. During the optimistic Roaring '20s, investments in the stock market soared. Between 1924 and 1929, the Dow Jones Industrial Average quadrupled. By 1929, 2 of every $5 borrowed in bank loans were spent on stock investments. As stock investors overextended themselves, they failed to read troubling economic signs. Farm communities were sliding into an economic depression. Consumer credit was reaching unsustainable levels. The first signs or trouble began on Black Thursday, October 24th, when the market lost 11% of its value. Then on Monday, it slid another 13%. By Tuesday, the market opened in a melee. In the first 30 minutes, 13 million shares were sold. At the time, stock transactions were recorded on ticker tape. According to Time magazine, by the end of the panic-filled day, 15,000 miles of ticker tape had been printed. The final totals were devastating. The market had dropped another 12%. Stocks continued to fall over the next few weeks. In all, $25 billion was lost. That equals more than $300 billion in today's money. The events of 1929 signaled the beginning of a global economic depression. The depression was devastating for working people. Before the depression, there were 25,000 banks in the United States. By 1933, 11,000 of them had failed. Families saw their entire life savings wiped away overnight. Unemployment soared to 25%. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt implemented his New Deal policies to put people back to work. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
It's time.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What an interesting week we've just had. Lots of craziness, lots of fun, lots of entertainment, especially around the Build Back Better plan. All of the things coming out about January 6th. We've got some elections coming up. So much to get to, so much to talk about, and that's why I'm glad that we've got our all-star panel back. I've got Rich Ojeda from No Dems Left Behind and Laura Packard, healthcare advocate and stage 4 cancer survivor. Guys, thanks for taking some time for us.
You're boom.
Thanks.
So let's start with the big revelation on Thursday. President Biden laid out his now $1.75 trillion Build Back Better plan, down from $6 trillion, then $3.5 trillion, now down to $1.75. Let's start with you, Laura. Good thing, bad thing, happy, unhappy, what?
Well, it's the Build Back Slightly Better plan. It does have some good stuff in it, but it's hard sometimes to see that for all the things that have been taken away. But there's still good stuff there, and it's not done. in the next few days, they're negotiating. So there are things that have been taken out, like lowering prescription drug prices and paid family leave that could get back in. Things like raising taxes on billionaires could get back in. So it's more important than ever to be on your representatives and tell them to vote for the good stuff.
Early and often. Rich, your thoughts on the unfurling of the, as Laura said, the Build Back Slightly Better plan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad to see something, because we need something. We need these jobs to be created all across the country. I'm disappointed, obviously the free college is out. It breaks my heart that, Kristen Sinema finally said that she would be okay with taxing these billionaires, and then Joe Manchin steps up to the plate from the state that has no billionaires, by the way, and he's going to become their champion to fight to make sure that they don't have to pay their fair share. So that's kind of disappointing. But at the end of the day, we need to get something passed, and then hopefully we can build on that over the next week.
Isn't your former Democratic, currently Republican, Trump-supporting governor, isn't he is he a billionaire, or maybe just slightly close to?
Well, no. In the beginning, it was listed that he was a $1.6 billionaire, but now his net worth is only $500 and some million. Now, I do know that he recently lost a major lawsuit that was basically about $500 million. So, yeah, this guy has, first off, they all were born into this kind of money.
Right.
And the way that they are always able to keep their money is they're experts in being able to cheat people. They go into contracts with these businesses, and then when it's time to pay up, they tell the businesses, well, I don't want to give you pennies on the dollar, or we could stay in court for the next 20 years and you're not going to get nothing. Yeah. So they play those tricks that the average person doesn't ever get to use when they're talking to banks, but they do, and it helps them to be able to keep their money.
Yeah,
but
we
now
just had
he's listed at 500.
We just had a guy in the White House who made a living out of doing that. What was his name again?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the weird thing. The weird thing to me is working people actually voted for that guy, and for a lot of these grifters and thieves. But that's a whole nother show. Since you brought up the money, I look at on Monday, Elon Musk pocketed a cool $37 billion, and there's no mechanism to go, hey, kids need education. Granny needs a new set of chompers. Hey, maybe we should get kids, a higher education. Maybe we should do a lot of things. But no, we've got $37 billion gazillionaire and no chompers for Granny.
Yeah, this guy literally, can actually look people in the face after making $36 billion on one day, and then has the gall to look into the camera and say, if they can tax people like me, they're going to tax you. They've been taxing us. We've always carried the weight. This is the first time that somebody's actually stepped up and said it's time that we hold the filthy, filthy rich people and hold them accountable. So, I mean, it's just garbage. It's a shame.
No, it's crazy. And it's crazy that, we're the richest country in the history of civilization at its wealthiest moment. And they're telling us, Laura, sorry, we can't do more on the healthcare front. We can't do anything. And this is the part that blows my mind. We can't do anything to negotiate for lower drug prices for Medicare. That seems to be just the simplest thing. You've got market power. Use it. Isn't this what conservatives tell us? The free market will solve the problems? Well, let the free market decide.
Yeah, you would think, but there are some good things in this bill, because how they're going to pay for it, at least the White House's plans that they've just said that they've released, 15% corporate minimum tax. So all of these companies that are making billions of dollars, like Amazon and so on, that don't pay any taxes, they're going to face a 15% corporate minimum. There's going to be a surcharge on stock buybacks. So when they take their profits and then they just use that to boost their own stock, they're going to have to pay a surcharge on that. They're also going to limit excess business losses for the wealthy, invest in IRS tax enforcement, and there's a millionaire surtax, surtax on people who make above 10 million. So we'll see what all winds up in the final bill. But the billionaires tax, I think, is not necessarily dead and done either. Manchin didn't sound enthusiastic. It's not in the framework today, but it's, things could change in the next week. Hopefully we can get them there. We can get the senators on board.
Yeah, that's the hope. But on this, they're shoring up some money for the Affordable Care Act, which I know you're a champion of. How does this look? I guess until 2025, they've got some money in place, which I think is a good thing. I think you absolutely have to have it so that, at least pushes through into the next administration.
Right. And so the healthcare pieces that are in the bill, the tax subsidies that were in the American Rescue Plan. So the things that came out this year to make Affordable Care Act health insurance plans cheaper than ever, that was just for this year and next year. And this extends that out till 2025, the end of 2025. So a few more years, people will be able to get these affordable health insurance plans. And they're filling the Medicaid gap. So low-income people in places like Texas and Florida and Georgia, where their Republican legislatures refuse to vote for health care, there's going to be a federal fix in those 12 states. And it's allowing folks to buy ACA plans instead. That also is only through 2025. So it looks like this bill is setting up a big fight in 2025 to extend this stuff or not, and that means everything is going to depend on what happens in the elections in 2024.
No, I think that's smart, because ultimately, once you get these plans in place, once you get these programs working, and people start to see that they're making their lives better, they're not going to want to give them up. And I point back to something Michelle Bachmann said back. The former Illinois congresswoman, who said, during the ACA fight, that if we allow them to get this, it'll be hard for us to get it back from them. And I've said the same thing, as much like happened with Medicare. My problem is we haven't made it better. This is the help to do that. You got a thought on this, Rich?
Yeah.
One more thing. It also includes hearing for Medicare. So vision and dental are out, but hearing is in.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that in a second, but go ahead, Rich.
Well, also, this is also extending the child tax credit, if I'm correct, which is absolutely elevating over 40% of the children in this country out of poverty. And that was one of the things where I was like, how could you not want to do this? I mean, we're talking about children here, and places where I come from, I look at these people and I keep telling them, I'm like, do you enjoy that capability? Because you better realize that not one single Republican wants you to have it. And that right there is a talking point that we need to be taking into the next election.
Oh, absolutely. These people who tell us that they care about the living, they're pro-life, yet don't want to help anyone who's here. It seems to be very interesting. But I did want to point to you, Rich, because I know in all the years you spent in the military, you've got some hearing problems. So it's good that maybe once you get to Medicare age, that's going to help or help people who get to Medicare age. I don't know how you go, we're going to give you hearing, but not eye and dental. That doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't. I mean, I will tell you that, hearing is important, but so is vision. So is dental. If you have teeth issues, that can affect your overall health. My mother, in her 70s, she cannot see directly at what she's looking at. She can only see in the around of it. If she's looking you in the face, she cannot tell if you're smiling, if you're sticking your tongue out or anything like that. She's in her 70s. These people absolutely need to have vision, dental, and hearing. And the mere fact that anybody could sit and argue to pull those things out shows that they absolutely are not focusing on doing what's best for the people who built this nation, who won our wars, and have just it's I can't believe it.
Yeah, but here's the thing: we don't want people to get too dependent on government, Rich. They'll get dependent, and then they won't want to work anymore.
No, you know what? I mean, there's no reason why we can't do this. We are like you said, we are the richest country on the face of the earth. You know, if you start looking at the country's wealth, you know, when you get up to like China, it's like they have $13 trillion. Then it's us. We have $22 trillion worth of wealth in this country, and yet we don't want to use it to benefit our people, especially the people, you know, you got, you know, the sick, you know, how we treat the sick, how we treat the poor, how we treat the elderly, how we treat the children. Those are things that we should be absolutely focused on, because that right there lets everybody in the world know what type of country that you are. And right now, by us cutting these things, it shows that we're quite selfish.
No. I mean, look, we love to have people love to tell us we're a Christian nation, and basically what you laid out, isn't that the basic tenets of Christianity? You know, caring for the weak, feeding the hungry, housing the homeless, caring for the sick. Isn't that the basic tenets of the Sermon on the Mount?
Now, come on now, Rick. You know we only use that when we're talking Bible verses. Come on. It sounds good, but as far as actually doing it, nah, they don't want to play those games.
No, it's insane to me. The stuff that got pulled out of it, you know, the college part of it, which I think should be universal. I think we should be adding that on to high school, and I've been arguing this for a long time. The reality is, you know, at one point an 8th grade education was enough. We then decided, no, we need a little bit longer. We need to get to high school age. We're now at this point where an associate's degree or a VOTEC program or that additional 2 years of training should be mandatory. It shouldn't be, it should be mandatory. It should be part of what we do.
And Rick, what you just said too, people don't understand the vocational side to this. If you don't want to go to college for 2 years, become a welder, become an electrician, become HVAC. These are phenomenal jobs and we need them.
Desperately need them. Now let's talk about the climate part of it, because I've got friends who are just apoplectic. They're losing their mind, that they don't think the administration has done enough. They don't think Democrats have done enough on climate. Laura, let's start with you. What's in this on the climate front?
Well, I don't have that in front of me, but I did see some statements this morning that people were cautiously optimistic about it. So maybe Rich has more to say.
Yeah, it was what they got is $550 billion that they plan on addressing climate with. A big part of that is tax credits for businesses to do some stuff, money to buy solar panels, the electric vehicles, big winners. Elon Musk is going to be all tingly in the panties, especially if he unionizes his workforce, because the EV tax credit could actually lower the cost of an electric vehicle, according to this, by over $12,000. But tons of things in that way. And they're going to set up a climate conservation corps to attract 300,000 young people to plant trees and do things in the wetlands and to help do things that are going to guard against the rising temperatures. I think it's a start. It's nowhere what we need. We needed that $6 trillion Build Back Better plan, but this is moving us in that direction, Rich.
Well, going in that direction is exactly where we need to be, but then we have to also fear what happens in 2022 and 2024. You know, Republicans are not supporting these things. You know, that right there is scary, that they could actually try to derail this later on down the road. You know, something that also comes out is you got somebody like Joe Manchin, who is on the Energy Committee. I believe he's like the chair of it, and he owns, you know, his family owns coal companies. I mean, there's a reason why he's acting the way that he is acting, because he gets $1.1 million a year as dividends from these places. I mean, there's got to be ways that our government looks at certain things and says, you know what, if you are in that type of area and you're a part of that, then maybe you shouldn't be on the Energy Committee.
I'm with you.
I mean, we've got to fix a lot of those things. But I will tell you, we're going in the right direction, but we're nowhere near where we need to be. Like you said, we needed to be at the 6 trillion mark, you know, and we're not.
So last question I've got on this, Nancy Pelosi had a deadline to get this Build Back Better plan done last month. Coming up here at the end of this month, you've got the deadline on the hard infrastructure plan. Do you see the hard infrastructure plan going forward if this isn't done? Laura, real quick, you?
Well, they wanted to get all this done before Biden took off for the climate summit, but it sounds like the progressives are going to stick together and they are not going to vote for the BIF, the bipartisan infrastructure plan, until they get more reassurances that this second plan is really going to be a thing.
Thoughts, Rich, real quick?
Yeah, I think that's how we're going to be. I think we're going to have to wait and see what the progressives, do. If they're going to meet anybody in the middle. If not, we're going to find ourselves in a stalemate.
I'm in this position where I'm still, from the beginning, I said, I still don't know we get anything, but I'm a little more optimistic now that this is, we seem to be coming down to some actual numbers, and maybe I'm not, like I said, a little guardedly optimistic as were before. As I said, I was not. But if the progressives derail this, it could be interesting in the coming weeks and months. But guys, I got to take a quick break right here. Stick around through the break. We're going to take a quick break. If you've got thoughts, questions, comments, love to hear it. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Here with our all-star panel of Rich Ojeda and Laura Packard. Quick break, right back. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1933. That was the day garment factory owners locked out dressmakers in several shops throughout Los Angeles. The women garment workers, overwhelmingly Mexican, had been organizing with the ILGWU for over a month. They began conducting strikes at selected shops the previous month to press their demands. The women wanted union recognition, a 35-hour work week, end to homework, shop floor committees, a guaranteed wage, and more. Historian Douglas Monroy observed that their demands reflected the harsh working conditions that they faced. It was a volatile, competitive seasonal industry. Businesses worked tirelessly to undercut each other and job out the work. Women workers were routinely unemployed or underemployed, subject to widespread wage theft and discrimination. They were frustrated by promises of the new Industrial Recovery Act, which promised the right to organize but held no provisions for enforcement. Employers flaunted the new legislation and continued to discharge workers for union activity. When the employers forced a lockout, Local 96 looked to the AFL's Central Labor Council to sanction a general dressmakers strike, which started 4 days later on October 12th. As many as 3,000 Latina strikers maintained solid picket lines despite dozens of arrests. ILGWU organizer Rose Posada arrived from New York to help with food distribution and packing the picket lines. The rank-and-file leadership produced a bilingual strike bulletin and made daily radio announcements. The strike ended in arbitration that conceded few gains to the garment workers. But the women of Local 96 continued to organize throughout the Los Angeles area. They led a series of strikes that would eventually win the closed shop. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So it's been an interesting week for Facebook, who over the years, they've had their problems. Absolutely. They've faced whistleblower complaints. They've had their PR headaches. Absolutely. They faced congressional inquiries, all that stuff. And yet this week seemed like it was all of them at once. As the Facebook papers hit, you had the whistleblower coming out saying all the stuff that came out there. You had Congressman Benny Thompson saying that Facebook was the organizing tool for the January 6th insurrection, and Congress is all over them. So what's the answer? What's the direction? What are they going to do? It should just change the name. It's no longer Facebook. It's now the metaverse. And you got to see the creepy Zuckerberg video of laying out how the metaverse is the future. Craziness on steroids. And here to share some thoughts on, is this the future for Facebook? Will this help them? Will this take some of the heat off? changing their name to Meta and the Metaverse. I've asked our good panelists to stick around. Rich Ojeda of No Dems Left Behind and Laura Packard, cancer survivor and executive director of Healthcare Voter. Guys, thoughts on the Metaverse?
What is it going to do? Changing the name, but nothing. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking, do I look at my phone? Does it say Facebook anymore, or what does it say? You know, if you continue going down that path, you get what you get.
I think this is all a corporate thing, changing their corporate holding company name. But I mean, if you paint your junker car, it doesn't turn it into a Porsche. It's still a junker. So they can change the name all day long, but it's not changing the company. It's just changing the paint color.
Yeah, but if you watch the video was creepy. I mean, really creepy. I mean, I don't know if that guy's a robot or what, and I want to know how much they paid the people to just walk by in the background with their head down. I have no idea about that, but as I'm watching this video, I'm getting this sense of, because he's talking about all the different platforms and all the different things, and I keep going, I'm expecting this to be like one of those Mike Meyer things where you're world domination in some harebrained scheme and him demanding $1 million. It was so weird.
Well, but when all this come out and you had the whistleblower, talking about how what they were doing and they were preying on certain groups of people. I mean, what they were doing was wrong, and there's a lot of things that we see in this country today with social media and how social media has been used to be an absolute weapon against people. I mean, as a person who spent 4 years in the classroom when I retired from the military, I will tell you 99% of the issues that you have in schools come from social media, and the majority of them are from Facebook. That's an absolute fact. And, to hear some of the things that they basically ignored was pretty, that was really messed up.
Yeah.
So I don't know if changing the name, I don't give a crap about the name. All I care about is how about you show us what you've done that's going to make Facebook or whatever it is safer.
Yeah.
How it's going to cut down on some of the negatives that are out there. How you're going to guarantee that people's profiles and things aren't going to be stolen like they've been for quite some time.
Yeah, my problem is that they built their algorithm, and we're now finding out what we already knew. I mean, this is now confirming what we knew, is that the anger and the hate and that kind of stuff got promoted at a much higher rate, because we understand when people are angry and fired up, they absolutely dive headfirst into the rabbit hole, and which is why you had all of the January 6th insurrectionists organizing on Facebook. It's not that difficult to figure out, Laura.
Mm-hmm. And this is their attempt to change the subject so that we're not talking about that. We're not talking about how they weighted the angry emoji 5 times more than the like emoji, even though they knew that was driving up all this misinformation and riling people up. So they don't want to talk about that. So instead, this is Mark Zuckerberg's attempt at trolling us and getting us to talk about how terrible the name is. Maybe even the creepy robot video is to get more people to talk on social media about that instead of about the ongoing problems that Facebook has and what it's doing to our country.
But we also can't forget about what took place on January the 6th and how that medium could have absolutely participated in bringing those people, cultivating that audience to go to Washington, D.C. You can change your name all you want, but there were crimes that were committed in the past that need to be, brought to the front.
Absolutely. And, last weekend you had the For God and Country Patriot Double Down, or simply the new Republican Party having a convention at some weird hotel, the Ahern Hotel in Las Vegas. This was the big Q-Kook convention, if you don't know. Lots of Q-Kookery. In fact, so crazy that even Michael Flynn pulled out of it. That's how extreme these people are. And where did they do their business? Facebook.
Wait, was this last week? Because I just got a COVID exposure notification and I was in Las Vegas, and I would not be surprised if it was some of the Q-addled anti-vaxxers running around were spreading it.
Quite possibly could have been. I mean, this is, I don't know where the Ahern Hotel is. I've never heard of it. It's not on the Strip, as I understand, because they were in some weird hotel where they, could all be together, because I guess nobody else would have them. So I guess, is what it is. But what we know is these people fell down that algorithm rabbit hole, and that's how they found each other. Look, we've always had kooks. We've always had tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist nuts. But they never were able to find each other and then cultivate even crazier crazy until Facebook.
Well, this was also, I believe, where the guy who was the actor in The Passion of the Christ, who stood in front of the crowd, and he basically gave the speech that, in the movie Braveheart, was given before, would you lay in your bed years from now? And all the people in the audience was screaming, and it was like they didn't even realize what this guy was doing, who was an actor, by the way, was basically just saying the speech that was given. But the way you heard them, it was like they were believing like it was from him right there on the spot. Crazy.
And it isn't just Facebook, it's YouTube and other social media sites too. But the information came out from Facebook. They set up a profile of a conservative-leaning woman just to sort of see what would happen. So she liked the Trump page, she liked some other pages. And then within a couple days, she was getting served straight up QAnon propaganda just because Facebook's algorithm was serving ever more radical stuff. So people can start off on these social media sites, being apolitical, not being especially involved or engaged, and then it just serves up ever more radical content. It funnels in YouTube same way. It's miseducating and radicalizing people.
And a lot of people think, and I have friends who think that the stuff that just shows up is random and is what their friends are sharing with them. They never realized it. And I think a lot of people don't realize that Facebook is, and all of these social media platforms, their job is to get you hooked on checking those notifications, which is why I don't have any notifications on any social media. And it's hooked on you looking at that screen every day, all day long, and consuming what they have to offer, because they keep pushing you what they think you want, and it's crazier and crazier. But this is one of these moments where you go, how do we change this? We've got elections coming up in a couple of days. We've got an opportunity to elect some sanity. I don't think it's going to happen. I think things have gotten so crazy, especially on the right, and they've organized because of Facebook so well that I'm concerned about our upcoming election, especially this race in Virginia for the gubernatorial race between Glenn Youngkin and Terry McAuliffe. Laura, let me start with you. Thoughts on this race? Is this as important as everyone says it is?
Well, to get back to your question, what do we do about social media? I think Congress has continued to have these hearings, and more stuff is going to come out, because we haven't even heard all of the stuff that was in the Facebook papers. That's going to still keep coming out, but we need to hold our elected officials accountable to, do something about it, whether it's breaking up big tech or some kind of hearings or personal fines. Make Zuckerberg pay for the misinformation on his platform. But for real world results, we're seeing Republican candidates in states like Virginia, they say one thing in front of private audiences and then another thing when they are talking in public. And so Virginia right now, it's a close race, and they could elect an anti-choice conservative zealot, and he's not showing that face to the average voter, but it's definitely there.
Yeah, and we could end up with another Scott Walker or even worse. Rich, your thoughts?
My thing is this is another one of those moments where this is Donald Trump. We know who Donald Trump is supporting, and hopefully Donald Trump once again loses again. Maybe then that will start to convince a lot of people out there that he's not the kingmaker that he wants people to think that he is. It seems to me like everything he touches, he's the opposite of the Midas touch, if you ask me. So, but I think that hopefully the Democrats will be successful, and this could be another loss for Donald Trump. And because I'll be honest with you, I would love nothing more than for him to realize that if he runs again in 2024, he's going to get embarrassed. And then I want him to just drop out of politics altogether. No,
that would be nice. Now, also, you've got the governor's race in New Jersey. There's some talk of, potentially, possibly, I can't imagine it happening, but the incumbent governor losing in this election. Thoughts, anyone?
That one doesn't look as close, but again, if Democrats historically have not been great at voting in off-year elections. People that vote just in the presidential year and then they go home. And that's a problem because through church networks and other networks, Republicans are more regular voters. And that's something that we got to fix. But going back to what we were talking about originally with Build Back Better, like if I were a young person and I just saw, school funding cut, paid leave gone, I would be kind of demoralized right now. So I think, our representatives in Congress need to step it up and speak to young people as well as seniors for the work that they're doing.
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I've had a number of people tell me, well, if that's not in the bill or if we don't get this or if this doesn't happen, I'm staying home. And that to me is one of the biggest fears that I have for next year, that if this plan doesn't encompass the things that a lot of people had their hearts set on, that they get disenfranchised, they go, the heck with it, it's all broken, I didn't get what I want, and they stay home. And that's what Republicans have always wanted, people to stay home.
Well, we know right now that the Republicans are already pushing legislation across this country to disenfranchise voters of color all over. So right now, everybody should already be seeing this stuff, and they should absolutely realize that if we don't go to the polls in mass, we will lose. The Republicans do not want you to get anything that is in this Build Back Better bill. The Republicans don't want us to do anything except keep giving money to the filthy rich and protecting the filthy rich. So everybody out there that's a Democrat, I don't care how rough it is. I don't care if you're in a community of color. You have to do everything in your power to make sure that you are registered to vote. You have the identification that is required to vote. You know exactly where your polling station is. You call a couple days beforehand and you make sure that it's going to be open. And if it's not, you know exactly where you got to go. But no matter what, you've got to make sure that you have your voices heard. And that's got to be a fact.
Yeah, you got to do your...
And if you live in a state with early voting, vote early. Please vote early. I know it can be fun and exciting to vote on election day, but life happens. And the last thing you'd want is to not have your chance to be heard. I mean, here in Colorado, it's all vote by mail, and I walked in my ballot to the elections office weeks ago. But I think they said 7% of Colorado voters have voted so far, and the election is Tuesday. So even when it's as easy as just filling out your ballot and sticking it in a drop box or mailing it, too many people are not doing that, and we need to be better.
That's crazy, just crazy. Now, there are a couple of congressional races up as well. I don't see any of them flipping. You got Ohio's 11th. That's replacing Marcia Fudge, who is Biden's Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. I don't see that changing. I think Chantel Brown will win that. In the 15th in Ohio as well, there's a Republican, Steve Stevers, who he resigned to become the president and CEO of the Ohio Chamber of Commerce. It looks like Trump guy Mike Carey will probably win there. In Florida, you got the primary election for Florida's 20th congressional district. That saw Elsie Hastings pass away back in April. That's a safe Democratic seat. So I don't think that you're going to see any real changes on the congressional front in this coming election. Thoughts?
Well, I think it's important if you live in one of those districts to vote, because first of all, the Republican-held district in Ohio is hard but not impossible. It's not likely that we'll see a shift, but it's not impossible. And second, in Florida, that's a primary, and the final, the general election is in January. But this is your chance to take a look at all of those candidates and figure out which one you like best, because right now we are seeing a couple senators and just a small handful of Congress people hold up really important, really popular things in this bill. So it really matters if you vote for somebody that is, a strong progressive that's going to vote for popular things, or if they are a big donor chump.
Now, the last question I got for you on Election Day. Obviously school boards are the focus right now because we've seen such insanity going on. This to me is one of those reasons that you have to vote. We've got to get out and defend our school boards. And if Democrats need a reason, this is it, because Republicans are organizing heavily around taking back education because there are too many books about stuff we don't like.
Yeah, absolutely. But, that's one of the things is everybody has got to get involved. We cannot sit on the sidelines any longer. The far right doesn't want real history taught to our children, and everybody needs to really pay attention to what's going on. I tell you, I look at these things, these videos where you see at these school board meetings, and, it's hard to even understand that in this day and age, we would have people acting the way that they are. We would have parents fighting to make sure that their children have basically access to getting sick, because that's exactly where we are. And just, it's amazing.
And your vote matters. And I mean, it's not always easy to figure out who all these people are all the way down your ballot. I do a lot of Googling when I'm voting for judges, and I look at various voter guides and so on to figure out. But it's important to vote and to make sure that you're not just voting for the people already in office because they're already there, but make sure that they really represent you and you support what they're doing, because a lot of these people are doing things that are just off the wall and nobody's holding them accountable.
But the Democratic Party needs to be involved. That's one of the problems, is the Democrats are not spending money at the state level. They're focusing, the Democratic Party is focusing, and they're only focusing on blue areas. One of the reasons why it's so important, what I do with No Dim Left Behind, is going in these places. We got Remillard that's running against Madison Cawthorn. We got Marcus Flowers taking on Marjorie Trainwreck Green. We're looking for somebody to bust Lauren Boebert. We want to go after these people, and the Democratic Party is not helping us a bit. But make no mistake about it, if we're successful, they're going to want to wrap their arms around these candidates that win. But at the end of the day, they really should get off their butts and help us out too.
I am right there with you. Rich, Laura, I got to take a quick break here. Stick around through the break. I want to pick this up on the other side. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1861. That was the day that the Pony Express made its last run and passed into legend. The mail delivery service had lasted only a year and a half, until it folded under competition from the newly completed transcontinental telegraph. The idea for a faster Western mail delivery service came from the owners of the wagon freight company, Russell, Majors, and Waddell. At the time, the railroad terminated in St. Joseph, Missouri. The goal of the Pony Express route was to cover the 2,000-mile route from St. Joe to San Francisco in 10 days, or half the time of competitors. Riders would travel between one station and another on horseback, switching horses as they went. For this arduous job, the company targeted young men, sometimes in their teens. The goal was to hire small men to keep the weight low for the horses. The riders had to sign a pledge not to drink, gamble, fight, or swear. To back up the clean living, they were each issued a Bible. Riders were paid a minimum of $50 per month in addition to room and board. The riders faced many hazards, from bad weather to thieves. They often traveled across lands in dispute between the U.S. government and Native Americans, adding to the potential danger. The fastest express delivery ever was Lincoln's inaugural address, which made it to California in under 8 days. Perhaps the most famous person who claimed to be be a Pony Express rider was Buffalo Bill Cody, although it's unlikely he ever carried the mail. He incorporated the Pony Express into his Wild West show, turning the mail service into the stuff of legend. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So a Texas state representative, guy trying to make a name for himself. Look, a lot of this is just these guys trying to figure out to go, hey, look at me, I'm over here. Look at how crazy I can be. But this state representative, Matt Krause of Fort Worth, Texas, has come up with a list of 850 books ranging on topics from racism to sexuality that he says could make students feel discomfort. And he now wants every school in the state to report back to him if they have any of these books on their shelves, if they're in any of the classrooms, any of the libraries. And I got to be honest with you, this is one of those things where I'm going, are we going to start seeing books burning next? Is that what's coming? I'm here to share some thoughts on, well, here's why elections matter. And maybe, hey, are the book burnings coming? Should we bring the marshmallows? I've asked our good friend Rich Ojeda of No Dems Left Behind and healthcare advocate Laura Packard to stick around. Guys, I appreciate you guys sticking around. So what do you think about this? What do you think about, we need to know where all the books are so we can make sure our children don't feel discomfort.
Well, I'd like to know, how many of those books has he actually read? Has he read 850 of those books? Has he read any of those books? I'd like him to start right there.
Yeah. And it's like, you would think that, he's old enough to probably maybe remember a little history. Are we going to start using Gestapo tactics? Are we going down that path? Is that the direction we want to go in this country?
But this is what's come out of these school board meetings. You're seeing a lot of this craziness come up, and this is a well-organized attack. This is not a bunch of parents who figured out, this is a front group who is feeding this kind of information and organizing this stuff so that they can take over the education system, because this is what the right has always wanted. They want to be able to indoctrinate like they claim the left is doing in public education. They want to be able to push whatever bizarre view of this country that they have down our children's throats.
I would like to see the list of these books, because I bet you that these books deal with slavery. They probably deal with, women's rights. That's where we're at. I guarantee it. And that's the topics that they don't want to talk about anymore. They don't want to educate our kids on anymore.
Yep. To highlight your point, he also directs the districts to identify any other books that could cause students guilt, anguish, or any force of psychological distress because of their race or sex, or convey that a student, by virtue of their race or sex, is inherently racist, sexist, or oppressive, whether consciously or unconsciously. So we not only have to get the stuff that's in our head, but that stuff that we don't know, that's there too.
I would imagine he's going to go after my friend Jason Stanford's book, Forget the Alamo. I think you had him on a show a while back where he actually goes into what happened in the Alamo. And the real story is not one that is the one that's told in Texas classes.
Aren't these the people that also make fun of people when they talk about their feelings? Now, looks to me like that's exactly where he's at now. We don't want to make anybody feel like, they're going to be depressed or anything like that.
Yeah, but here's the thing. This is another one of those real divisive things that meant to pit us against each other. While in the backdrop, we now see a study that's come out from one of the congressional one of the U.S. House Select Subcommittee on Coronavirus, who points out that in the meatpacking industry, we had over 59,000 workers infected with COVID-19 and had 269 of them die. So, hey, we're going to fight over what books in the library, but we're going to ignore the fact that we've had dangerous working conditions for workers and have almost done nothing to this point to protect them. So, hey, divide and conquer over here, and well, let those people suffer on the other side and do nothing about it. This is what drives me insane about our political system.
Priorities. Got to have your priorities.
And the reason I bring that up is because, look, you know, the story broke this week that you've got Richard Burr, the senator from North Carolina, who evidently had a phone call with a brother-in-law who, the second they got off the phone, ended up going and dumping a bunch of stock. And I'm going, so let me get this straight. We got all these meatpacking workers who got sick. And in fact, there was one place where they found out that supervisors were trying to get them sick and betting on how many they could get sick, but didn't see anybody go to jail there. We've seen this kind of opportunism, and yet again, nothing happens. I still want to know why the two senators from Georgia aren't behind bars, but that's another thought. And I see, Laura, you shaking your head. Jump in there.
Yeah, well, Richard Burr came out the day before Biden's inauguration and said, oh, the Justice Department cleared me. So that was probably a parting gift from Trump. But yeah, both the former Republican senators in Georgia were trading off of people's lives, and they have not been held to account. It sounds like the SEC is still investigating Burr, so there could still be consequences. But for too long, these folks have profited off of the misery of their fellow Americans, and nobody's held them to account.
You know, it's sad. You know, nobody should be above the law, but it's starting to look like in this country certain people are. You know, I will tell you that Carol Miller, the congresswoman from West Virginia, she comes from a family that owns car dealerships, and car dealerships, as far as I'm known, they're not having an issue selling cars during COVID, but all of her 5 dealerships each got a PPP loan for $350,000 to $1 million each. You know, it amazes me how these are the people that are the recipients of all of this money. They're the ones that are always on the inside. They know what's going on. They're doing this insider trading, and they're the ones that are getting away with it. You know, we're supposed to be a country where nobody is above the law, but yet the average citizen is watching these people get away with this every single day. And honestly, we really need to see some of these people. I want to see Lawfer. I want to see Perdue. I want to see these people go down. I want to see these people go down for what happened on January the 6th. You know, I want to see everybody that committed these treasonous acts to be held accountable, because once again, if you have a coup that goes unpunished, then it's just a training exercise, and the next one, they'll succeed.
No, I'm with you. But, you know, the thing is, the people who would do this are the same ones who will look down their noses at working people who need that extra $250 or $300 a month to help feed their kids. They're going to look down their noses at the senior who needs help getting hearing aids or glasses or dental work. They're the reason we can't have nice things, so to speak.
Yeah, Joe Manchin. Yeah. Joe Manchin wants to say it's an entitlement mentality. You know, you're looking at people that literally, if it wasn't for those $250 to $300 that they get a month for their children, their kids live below the poverty line. You know, but he don't care about that. You know, he's absolutely a person that will have no problem cutting those things that we need. You know, we need free college. We need the billionaires to pay their fair share. You know, it's a shame that we've got people in this country that are supposed to be the leaders that aren't leading for the people. They're leading for the filthy rich, and that's all they care about.
Yeah, and if not free college, at least back to the way it used to be when, you know, the people my parents' age went to college, where, you know, I have a friend who's probably 20 years older than I am. She went to Michigan University all the way from a bachelor's degree through her law degree, and was able to work a minimum wage waitress job. She lived in a crummy apartment, drove a jalopy car, but wasn't saddled with a lifetime of debt. In fact, she was telling me that her tuition for a year was $500. And you go, yeah, what is that in today's dollars? Nowhere near the $50,000 a year it takes to go there now.
But we give 12 years of college. We give 12 years of school. Add 2 more years to it, you know, to me, and it can be trade school, something like that. Understand that other countries, people pay taxes. And when you pay your taxes in other countries, that's given to you. Your health care is provided to you because you pay taxes. This extra schooling that you can get is provided to you because you pay taxes. We pay taxes, but what do we get from our taxes? That's the problem.
Yeah, we get richer. We get a richer billionaire class. Laura, you want to jump in?
Yeah. Well, also, we've gone after cinema and mansion, and there's plenty to go after there. But there's also 50 Republican senators in half the Republican House that isn't doing a damn thing. That, you know, for as much as cinema and mansion are holding up these popular things, where are the Republicans? Why don't they have a single thing to say about making our healthcare system better, about making our planet livable for our grandkids, about making education affordable, about fixing our immigration system? They're not even trying.
I understand that as a person, you know, I spent a couple years as a senator in West Virginia. You know, the Democratic Party, you can be who you are. You know, nobody ever told me how to vote. Now, we had conversations about every single bill, but you, as long as you could justify your vote, you voted how you want. That's not how the Republicans do business. The Republicans march in lockstep. And if a Republican doesn't do exactly what the rest of the Republicans do, they get absolutely, you know, kicked to the curb. Right now, look at Liz Cheney. Look at Kinzinger. Right now, they are basically pariahs in their party just because they stood up and said, look, we need to daggone get to the bottom of this. That's how the Republican Party operates. It's their way or the highway.
No, and it comes down to the money. I mean, and this is where I keep saying a couple of things. One, we got to get money out of politics. Why we need to undo Citizens United. And I've said from the beginning, I'm in favor of publicly financed elections. Both candidates get the exact same resources, and let's see who runs the best campaign, who has the best ideas, not who can be deepest in the billionaires' pockets.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But on this front of our congressmen and our senators and our people in high office becoming millionaires as they're in Congress because of this insider stuff, I've often said, and the thought that maybe comes out of this is, I think everything that they do shouldn't be just in trusts somewhere, but I think everything they do should be reported on in live time. There should be like a ticker that says when they make a trade, that all of us get to know when they made that trade, so that maybe we can jump in on it. If the whole system is really that corrupt, maybe we should all benefit from their insider information.
I think that lobbyists should be made to wear body cameras. I think that there should be cameras in the offices of our elected officials where you can actually tune in and you can watch. You can check and see what's on his schedule, and you can watch the meetings unfold, you know, in real time. I mean, honestly, that's what needs to happen. If these people knew that their constituents were watching them, then they would be more likely to do the right thing for their constituents. The problem is a lot of people vote, and then they don't pay attention to what their legislators do, and their legislators know this. So they know that they can do what they want as long as they show up. I mean, look at this. You had Alex Mooney from the 2nd Congressional District of West Virginia, who voted against the whole thing about funding the vaccine. And then the very next day, he's in Charleston, West Virginia at a COVID vaccine center, taking photographs, acting like he's the reason why they're able to do what they can do. It's a shame.
But isn't that what C-SPAN was supposed to be? We're able to see what they're doing, and it's turned into is an opportunity for them to grandstand and get their audition to get on Fox News or whatever crazy right-wing station that they end up on.
Do your job.
Well, I think another part of this, I think, is the billionaires and hedge funds buying up media properties and just decimating your local newspapers and, you know, taking the profits and letting them fold. Ann Arbor, where I lived for many years, doesn't have a local daily anymore. Denver here is one of the big victims of these hedge funds that kill newspapers. And it's been shown when people, don't have access to a good daily newspaper, to good local sources of news, the corruption rates in their local government go way up. So not only your elected officials in Washington, D.C., but your city council and your mayors, they know that nobody's watching and they can do whatever they like, and it's not pretty.
Yeah, and that's how Facebook gets the power it has, because the number I saw was astronomical of where people get their news, and Facebook was way at the top, and all of it's nonsense. And this is where I keep telling my kids, the number one thing that they have to learn is how to evaluate sources, because information is really cheap right now.
Yeah, you guys are talking to somebody who took a pipe to the back of the head and 8 broken bones with brass knuckles while I ran for office. Yeah, believe me, I know all about local corruption.
Ouch. Do tell about that.
Oh, you never knew that?
No, I didn't hear that before.
Yeah, 2 days before I won my state Senate seat, I was lured away from a political gathering by a guy that I've known my whole life, who asked me for a bumper sticker, and I put one on the back of his vehicle. And then he said, could you put one on the front? Well, I went around to the front, I kneeled down, and the next thing you know, I'm opening my eyes and everybody's saying, don't move, ambulance is on the way. He struck me in the back of the head with the pipe, rolled me over, and then laid into me with brass knuckles, broke both my eye sockets, both nasal passages, 4 breaks on my jaw. And of course, they gave him a slap on the wrist. This was all part of the plan. The courthouse, the prosecuting attorney, all of them went together to make sure he didn't do any real time. Believe it or not, though, he overdosed about 3 days ago and passed away finally. But yeah.
Wow. Yeah, West Virginia, no joke. Look, I've been through there, no joke. So last question I've got for you. Predictions for what we're going to see on Election Day?
I'll go ahead. I honestly, I keep seeing, are we talking about in 2022?
No, here in a couple of days.
Oh, well, I'm hoping that we see the governor in Virginia, as a Democrat. I hope that Donald Trump proves to be the opposite of the Midas touch.
Yeah, I'm hopeful that Democrats win in New Jersey and in Virginia, and that we learn something from this, and that we don't take our voters for granted. Like in California, the recall. I think people thought it was taken care of, and then the polling showed that it was close, and then people started getting involved, started talking to voters. But we can never take voters for granted. We have to tell them what's going on and why it's important and why they should vote.
Absolutely. And make sure that if you have the opportunity to get out and vote, it's your duty. It's that simple. But guys, I appreciate you taking time for me. As always, good stuff, Laura, Rich. Thanks so much. If you've got any thoughts, any questions, comments, I'd love to hear it. Topics you want to hear covered here on the panel, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time. And remember, check us out on social media at Rick Smith Show on Twitter, Facebook. Give us a like, YouTube, subscribe. Tons of ways to participate with the program. And as always, email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk. It's time for The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. What an interesting week we've just had. Lots of craziness, lots of fun, lots of entertainment, especially around the Build Back Better plan. All of the things coming out about January 6th. We've got some elections coming up. so much to get to, so much to talk about, and that's why I'm glad that we've got our all-star panel back. I've got Rich Ojeda from No Dems Left Behind and Laura Packard, healthcare advocate and stage 4 cancer survivor. Guys, thanks for taking some time for us.
Hey, boom.
Thanks.
So let's start with the big revelation on Thursday. President Biden laid out his now $1.75 trillion Build Back Better plan, down from $6 trillion